Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our special city council meeting. I ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and
to the republic which stands
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Here.
Councilmember Dewey,
Here.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Here.
Councilmember Lizzo. Here. Councilmember Sears is currently absent.
Thank you. Councilmember Sears will be here momentarily. And for those wondering, we normally dress a little differently, but in honor of the Cardinals opening day, I decided we'll dress down a little bit and everyone seems to have some red on. So very good. Russ is the only one who's got a tie on. I mean,
Red tie.
it's red. That's good.
I
So,
already gave him the business about it.
oh no, it's great.
I'm not sure why the mayor didn't take in consideration those possible Toronto Blue Jay fans.
Don't. Just an excuse to dress down one night. Okay. All right, we have no introductions, presentations, or public hearings. Do we have any public comments?
Mayor and council, there are no requests for comment at this time.
Thank you. There's no consent agenda. So the only item for tonight, and the reason for the special meeting is the second reading on our budget. And before we start, can I ask for a motion to bring substitute bill 10967 to the floor?
Motion.
Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion second, or any questions or comments on that? Well, I will explain what that is there's been an addition to the budget of $402,476 for our self-insurance medical fund. So that's the only difference from the proposed budget. Seeing no other questions or comments, all in favor of the motion to bring substitute bill to the floor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion passes. So now we have on the floor substitute bill 10967.
Mayor and council, this is an ordinance adopting and approving the operating and capital budgets for the city of Kirkwood for the fiscal year April 1, 2023 through March 31, 2024, and appropriating such sums as are set forth herein for all departments and the accounts therein specified for all expenditures of the city of such year, which appropriations total $103,373,088, capital projects of $11,877,601, appropriating the sum of $203,400 for payment of principal for Performing Arts Center interfund loan from the general fund, and reappropriating $18,515,460 for previously approved projects that will be incomplete as of March 31, 2023.
Thank you. I'm just gonna make one very brief remark on the budget to start it off. I'm in favor of the budget as it is with the inclusion of the medical self-insurance fund money. I know there's been some conversation about a water rate increase of 30%. I have thought about that, and I am of the opinion that we are best to stick with, for this year, the 15% water rate increase. We've got some stuff coming up in the next year with the water audit and the study, and I think it's going to give us a lot of information on different things. So I just want to let upfront, I am in favor of the budget as it is, which is a 15% rate increase on water. So let's see, who's Councilmember Ward, anything?
Yeah, a couple of questions. One for Mr. Hawes. Is it possible to delay any line replacement and reduce that need for that 15% or a portion of the 15%?
Bill Bensing and I have discussed that. Bill, do you just want to touch on that? Because we have a primary grant project that is the West Essex. So
the biggest problem with water main replacement reduction right now is the West Essex project. Okay, and we plan on reconstructing West Essex in the summer of 24. So portion of that means that we have to replace the water main this summer in advance of it. Okay, and we won't be able to move the project back because of the funding limitations and the budgeting of East-West Gateway also. So that's why we can't do it. But I will give you some, Russ does not know this, so sorry, Russ, sorry for bringing this up, is that we did get our bids back for the West Essex project on the water main, okay? And it came in very much under estimate. We put in the budget for nearly $1.5 million, and the project came in at just about $1.2 million, $1.3 million, okay? So in that case, what I would say is that I would want to do another water main project. But if you don't want to do that, we can reserve that 500,000 this year and not do that. Okay, we would just do the West Essex project and not do, we do have to do one small water main project that's on Kirkwood Road. And that again is tied to a grant project that we have to up at Jewel. We have to do about a 100-foot main replacement project for before we do the Kirkwood Road project, which is also a grant project. So that will be the option of the city council, because we'll be coming before you at the April 6th meeting to approve the West Essex project for water main replacement. And then at that time, if we don't want to do any more water main replacement for the rest of the year, with that additional money we have left over, we can do that if the council desires to do that.
It seemed like that might be advantageous if we've got the audit coming up, if you're sitting on that money.
The water audit is completed, okay? And the final report, I think we got it this week, okay? I will tell you with the water audit, there's no surprises. We're losing water, okay? We're gonna continue to lose water. That's not gonna stop anytime soon. But some of our recording, there's some recommendations on how we record our lost water and things of that nature. And we're going to revise our spreadsheets to accommodate a more accurate type of recording of how we get our water consumptions reports from the field and how we apply it towards the bill that Missouri American does that. So we are going to do that. We can get you a copy hopefully next week or the week before of the water audit, but I can tell you right now, there's nothing surprising in it. And all of the recommendations that they made in the report, we've already done. Most of them, okay? As far as doing a water inventory, exploring for water main replacement, water leaks, and replacing our water meters. We did that 8 years ago. So we've done several of the recommendations already, and our water continues to leak, basically.
All right, thank you. Because I think we really need to have a more comprehensive plan to address that water issue. And yeah, because I have a question.
Yeah.
Streets too.
Yeah.
The safe streets.
Can I ask one question on just on the main replacement, other than West Essex and the Kirkwood Road you mentioned, what else is planned for next year for water main
For
replacement?
fiscal 24?
Yeah.
Our fiscal 24, really, it was just the West Essex, okay? But we have 2 other projects that are in a queue that have been designed and we're waiting for funding on. And one is the Kirkwood Road that we
Yeah.
talked about. The other one is on Big Bend. There's a section from Kirkwood Road to the east, almost to the city limits. There's a water main there that's recommended for fire flow to be upgraded there. And that's about a $600,000 project for that one.
Okay.
Outside of that, we're designing this year, we're in the design for the Rayner
I
Road,
was going to ask you about
Taylor
Ranger
Young,
Road, yeah.
which is scheduled for the summer of 24 for replacement.
Okay, so that's not up for replacement next budget year. Okay,
Correct.
that was good, because I know I've seen a lot of back and forth with
Right,
you
so
on the
that's
residents there.
Summer of 24, so that would be
Understood.
25 budget year.
Okay, all right, okay. Well, sorry, Walter, while we're on
No,
that.
sorry. Water is water. Safe streets,
Mhm.
important for the community, important for the city. But we don't have any estimation of its cost increase to us on a street mile basis. And there's no line item for it in here. Are we tracking how we're spending on spending that's attributed to safe streets?
In the past, no, okay, it was just part of the project cost, and there was no specific line item in any of the budgets for complete streets attributes, okay? With the I'm gonna get it wrong, SS4A grant.
Mhm.
That is part of the grant, is to put together, hopefully they'll provide us a software that helps us track those elements as they're done, okay? Because one of the things the city does not do a really good job of is tracking things. So because we have an ADA transition plan, and every time we improve an ADA ramp to bring it up to standards, we should be tracking those things, okay? And we track them, but not in a comprehensive fashion that we should. But with this grant, that's part of the grant, is to help us develop a tracking system so we can better track these elements.
Thanks, Bill. Another one for Russ.
Mhm.
Russ, with regional crime on a real increase here, we haven't talked about any additional potential needs for additional funding for the police department. It's my understanding we're fully staffed now, and I don't know whether we need additional. We've not spoken to the chief or heard anything, so I'm just wondering whether we should anticipate some additional allocation for funding to the police department.
So the police department has been adding to its capabilities year to year to year, and city council tends to approve those through the equitable sharing fund, through the allocations that are devoted from that fund to the improvements, such as the flock camera system that was recently purchased. That is a direct result of the stolen vehicle activity and really the perpetrators coming to Kirkwood, even though the crime doesn't necessarily happen in Kirkwood. The plot camera can identify that that's on a database and call it through. So that's an example. We've also upgraded tasers. We've upgraded our training capabilities with simulators. So I think there have been continual upgrades in the police department, and we've been sensitive to what the chief has identified as his budgetary needs to keep the citizens safe in Kirkwood.
No additional manpower needs?
No, he hasn't identified any, no.
I think that might be it for me, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes, thank you. To add on to your comment, I do approve the budget and the 15% increase. Also, I think 30%, although it would prevent a compound increase. I think with all the expenses that people are experiencing now, that's just too much. 15% for a lot of people is still going to be something that they're going to have to consider. And we've gotten some feedback from residents about, dealing with increased costs. First question, Russ, and I've mentioned this before, looking at the budget revenues increasing 8.7%, expenditures increasing 11%. We've done a lot of creative things in the past, partnering with other municipalities to provide services. First question, do we have any idea of any other municipalities that we might be interested in partnering with? Are there any talks with anybody that would be interested in our services?
We've been approached by some municipalities in the past that didn't identify, through our analysis as a good fit for the city, and we moved on from those. We've identified those who are a good fit for the city. There are still some opportunities out there without naming names and interest from municipalities and jurisdictions. And I say jurisdictions because it doesn't just have to be a municipality that can benefit from some of the capabilities that the city has. And the city can benefit from an arrangement such as what we have with our neighboring municipalities, as long as it is designed correctly and identified as a beneficial arrangement for both parties. That's the only way we enter into it.
And of course, that makes sense. And, we do a good job with partnering with these other agencies.
Mhm.
And it's certainly a good way for us to have some additional revenues for the city. So.
Right, and increased capability for the city as well.
That's right.
I mean, where we partner with Glendale, we basically have a fourth fire department, a fourth firehouse without the expense of building a fourth firehouse.
Exactly. Yeah, economies of scale that way.
Mhm.
And I'm sure that there's a limit on how many municipalities that we could support or serve or work with. Hopefully we're not anywhere near that limit, but I'm sure that there is at some point,
Mhm.
so.
Depending on the service, we want to make sure that we have the capacity. And if we don't have the existing capacity, then the ability to build up, and that has to be paid for by the incoming servicer.
Okay.
Servicee. Mhm.
Great. Guess we can come back to me if anybody else has some questions. Thank you. Thanks,
Mhm.
Russ.
Councilmember Dewey. yeah.
I would just say that I agree with you. I think the 15% is adequate, and I think this is a good budget.
Councilmember Gibbons.
Russ, going back to, bringing up the police.
Hmm.
it-
Hey, Liz,
we're-
Liz. Microphone.
Oh,
So-
sorry.
so people are watching.
Yeah, we're gonna be adding, a new well, I don't know if you say significant, but more residents, right? In the near future. Probably 300 to 400. At what point in numbers of citizens do we need more officers? Is it increments of 1,000 or increments of 2,000?
I don't think there's a clear cutoff point where you identify, okay, we've passed that point, we must add another officer. It's more operationally what can be handled with the operations plans that are identified within the department, with the staffing and with the turnover and with the equipment and the capabilities and with the constraints of the budget.
And is fire the same way, or is that based on number of citizens and number of households and?
Fire is a little bit different because they have NFPA standards. And, we certainly have an agreement, a collective bargaining agreement with the fire union to ensure that both parties are held to the standards that are agreed upon. So that's a little bit different. We also have the Fraternal Order of Police with our police department, but we go by CALEA standards in the police department. And we were just recently renewed for CALEA for certification. So the police department is not tied in the same way as the fire department is to numbers.
Okay. I wondered about when Bill was talking about, we are not currently auditing complete streets and the cost of it. Will this new software, is that something that it can do for us? Or do we know?
Well, the SS4A grant will help determine that.
Okay,
That's why we're going to be planning to determine exactly how we can implement safe routes to schools, connectivity for southeastern Kirkwood, the complete street elements that are part and parcel to those issues.
mhm.
That's all planning that needs to occur. And I really couldn't answer as to what software would be appropriate in order to accomplish the implementation of those plans.
Can I kind of interrupt? Can I ask Bill a question?
Mhm.
But in terms of complete streets, I mean, we've kind of started, as you are having streets design, incorporating those elements, correct?
Certainly.
Yeah. So, I mean, when they're designing, go ahead if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the elements themselves are, they're incorporated into the project, a bump out. Okay, so what does a bump out cost? It's really just curbing. Okay, it's another 30, 40 foot of lineal foot of curbing and maybe an extension of the handicap ramp and things of that nature. So those are things, but there are other key things that are high dollars that are bid items on the bid, a PHB. we're talking, $100 and something $1,000. So that's a line item. So those are easy to put a cost to. The other things, yes, we can probably in the future, look at things where when we do those line items that we can cost those out during the engineering design phase and say, this bump out, if we wouldn't have done it, what's the cost difference and things of that nature. Okay. So, right now, as I've always said, this city's been doing complete streets for probably 50 years. Okay. And it's never been attributed to complete streets. We've always had a very walkable community. We've always done our ADA transition things. And we were one of the first communities to have a bicycle routes by ordinance back in the 80s. So we've always been ahead of it. So we've always incorporated those costs with a lot of our projects.
Mhm.
There's just now a more focused atmosphere on what we're doing. But we can, in the future, we would make that, I would recommend to talk to Chris and Jonathan about that, to make sure that there's a cost component of the software so we can
Mhm.
track the actual cost.
Mhm. Bill, one other thing I wondered about is when we were talking about the water audit, you said that their recommendations were things we already had done.
Mhm.
Why would a water audit suggest stuff that we already had? I don't get it.
Well, it's an AWW standard and they just give you those recommendations, okay?
Oh.
Because honestly, it goes back to what I've always said is that we have a system with 1,000 leaks, okay? And thousands and millions of them. And even though we're losing, unaccounted water at a rate of around $270,000 to $300,000 annual, to track all of those leaks down and fix all of those leaks, it's in the millions and millions of dollars and a long time.
Yeah.
The system didn't get leaky overnight. It took 100 years to get this way.
That's all I.
Thanks, Bill. Councilmember Lizzo.
Oh, thank you. So I'm happy to hear that we're talking about a 15% water increase because it's still a double digit and as others have expressed, with inflation, we've got a temporary electric rate increase. I mean, costs of everything are going up for the citizens. So trying to rein that in and just sticking with the 15% and then getting the data from the coming studies, I think is a welcome change. I do have questions about continuing the interfund transfer from water because we're increasing the rate, but then proposing to take $710,000 from the water fund and put it into the capital fund to be used on other projects. I'm assuming primarily streets, which all the citizens certainly, have been clamoring for improving street conditions. But I have a question about sufficiency of water main replacements, given that we have so much unaccounted water loss. So would it be, I would like to keep the money in the water fund as much as possible without, going too far overboard and damaging what, capital projects we have outside of the water fund. But it's like a whole complicated, intertwined question. The infrastructure renewal charge that we started in April 2015. Since that time, we've collected about $8.8 million according to, and I want to thank Sandy and Jen for cobbling together a whole bunch of information that I just requested yesterday, and I appreciate them getting
And Bill
this.
Densing as well.
And Bill getting this information to me. It gives a pretty good snapshot of what's been going on as far as the water fund, actually since fiscal year 2015. So with that charge which is basically intended for water main replacement, since FY16, we've collected about $8.8 million. But in the same period, even though we've hoped to target at least 1% water main replacement per year, we've actually only had not quite 4% main replacement. So we're we're not managing to make the mark. Now, there've been intervening complications, the pandemic, all kinds of funding issues and everything, but I would argue that getting on main replacement should be one of the major things that the water department does. People complain about streets. They can see the streets. They can't really see the water mains. That's one of the problems. They can see it when it breaks and you've got a fountain in the road. But, so if they knew what was going on with our water mains that are pretty much underground and hidden, they might also be clamoring about water mains as well. I'm clamoring, and for those who may not be aware, that, I would like to argue that we need to spend at least as much money as the citizens have contributed toward water main replacement, which through the end of fiscal 2022 is, like I said, about $8.8 million. We've only spent $7.14 million on that not quite 4% replacement. So at the very least, spend the money that you've requested, Bill, for this year on main replacement, which was 1.535 or something like that, to get West Essex done, to get, if you've got another $600,000 project teed up, go ahead and do that, fire supply, whatever. But I would also like for us to seriously consider reducing the amount of the interfund transfer and allow Bill to have an additional $500,000 to retain in the water fund to add to the main replacement projects that have been lagging almost forever. I mean, last year, fiscal year 2022, it was 0.26% of water main replacement. If we replace 1% per year, it takes us 100 years. We're basically like streets. We're always working on water mains. We're replacing cast iron with PVC, this blue stuff which has an assigned design life of what, Bill? I don't know, 50, 75 years or something like that. Some say it will last longer. But in any case, we need to get on this. And I believe that, it's difficult chasing underground leaks. But at least if we get on the water main replacement thing, every once in a while, a blind squirrel, finds a nut, and we're gonna come across some of the leaks and eventually reduce our unaccounted water loss due to leaks that are hard to follow, and not be wasting $350,000 a year in water that we're buying from Missouri American, but we're unable to bill for. And I'm assuming the water loss audit is basically saying it's water leaking. It's not our meters that are faulty. It's not fraud of people stealing it. It's mostly just leaking. So, given all of that lengthy, whatever the heck, I would like to move, and I don't hope there's a second to this. I would like to move that we would reduce the proposed water transfer to the capital fund for this year to $210,000 from the $710,000, so that Bill has an additional $500,000 that he can spend on necessary projects in the water fund, which is where, it comes from people using water, us billing the water. That's the intention. The entire thing is to make sure that the revenues are helping realize the intention of the water department, the water fund itself. So
your motion is to reduce.
my motion is
transfer
to
from
reduce the
710 to
proposed,
210.
yes, from 710 to $210,000.
Okay. All right. There's a motion. Is there a second for that?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. I'll get, you and I've talked about this.
We did.
several occasions, and obviously, I'm not in favor of that. I think a couple things. I think the transfers are an important part of what we do, whether it's 700,000, 200,000, that's part of the ownership of a company. It's our water company. And we use funds from that, electric and sanitation, across the board for other projects in the city. So if we take away $500,000 of the transfer, we've got $500,000 we're short. What are we gonna do? We either cut, find other ways to raise the capital for that. I've always been, since I've been around, a big proponent of the transfers. I think each company, electric, water, sanitation, have to, run themselves. If there's costs that need to be allocated for with increases, we do that. I just think the transfers are a way for us to spread from our enterprise funds across the city and to give revenue for other projects. So I would not be in favor of that. So, and let me go by. Yeah, you're first anyway.
I'm opposed to that change also, simply because it's just a bad investment. It's financially better for us to let the water leak through the ground than to repair lines. It's just financially, it's better for us to pay for new water rather than pay at the rate we're replacing it at less than 1% a year. Now, if Councilmember Lutzow would say, let's dedicate that money toward creating an earmark fund for our water main replacement, because that's what we need. We'll never get there in-house or with the East-West Gateway. We'll never get there within 100 years. We need to go after a big funding source from the feds, get our federal representatives to write some money to us so we can get after really repairing and replacing our water network. So that's why I wanted to hold on any more main replacement this year, but I understand the common sense for the, projects that we have out there for right now, but I would think we should consider that for the following fiscal right now. But if we can commit that money to try and create some earmark funds, I'll go with that, but I don't want to put more of it into the ground this year.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes, thank you. I understand what you're trying to do here, and I guess my concern would be if we don't transfer that 500,000, as the mayor said, what are we going to cut? Do we have any idea what we would cut? Is there anything that we could cut?
That would be up to city council, really.
So there's that problem. Now, if we wanted to maybe look to a future budget and say, okay, we're going to plan in, fiscal 2025, we're not going to transfer 500,000. And that way we're not relying on that 500,000 for another project somewhere. But, I'm not sure what we would cut now for that 500,000 by not transferring it, if that makes sense. If we are planning on these transfers to make adjustments to those transfers, I would be open to that. I think we need more time to do that. I think if we're going to start doing that, because I agree, these transfers are important because they fund these other projects. That's why we have these enterprise funds. That's why we have these businesses. We take those profits, instead of them going outside of Kirkwood, we use them in Kirkwood. But if we want to be flexible, then we need to be very strategic and plan ahead as to how we're going to adjust our spending and where we're going to cut and where we're going to make a sacrifice to use that 500,000 on a water main, if that's what we're going to do, if that makes sense. I would like to see us do future planning if we're going to adjust these transfers.
Councilmember, do anything?
I would just agree that I think this needs it's a much greater conversation and a much more consideration of how to do it and where to do it and should we do it.
Councilmember Gibbons?
Well, I was, we've already heard that the bid came in lower, so there's already some funds there. To me, then that means we don't need to transfer as much, right? Am I thinking?
No, well, I don't want to get too off. I was going to bring that up later. Councilmember Ward's question to Bill. Sounds like there might be 200 to 250 less on the bid. Is that what you said? Something like that on West Essex?
About 300 and something.
Okay. 300,000, and again, I don't want to get too far because we have a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
One of the reasons for proposing a 30% increase is because of our cash situation. I would just as soon see that go in to the cash, which kind of helps build that up without going to a 30% or a higher than 15% rate increase. So that was my thought on that. Well, Councilmember Litzo made the motion. Councilmember Sears.
Yes, I think, well, I'm not in favor of changing things at this point partly because of what Mark thought. And then I agree with Wallace that, we have to look, it's terrible that we lose water, but if they tell you it's going to cost you $1 million to save 200,000 or whatever, you have to accept the terrible, for the time being. But I also think that the transfers are important because we've all noted that it goes to fund other projects. Well, that means that if that money is not there, we have to look for other ways to fund the projects. And so when you look at the different sources of revenue that the city has, you squeeze as much as you can out of each revenue, and then you're left with just a few, and nobody wants to raise the real estate tax, which is a real possibility. If we lose enterprise transfers, we'll have to raise money to fill in the gaps. And, right now, the citizens enjoy, in my view, a very low city. Make sure you're understanding what I'm saying. Real estate tax, a couple of, for most people, a few $100s a year. I know our real estate tax bill is a lot greater than that, but the city portion is quite small and a real bargain in my view. But we're going to have to start increasing that by significant amounts since the amount is so small in order to make up some of the gaps if we're going to start leaving gaps. So that's one reason, I think the funds are important. Plus, it is a business. And I think citizens, will understand that while their own costs are going up, people have referenced that a lot. Well, the citizens' expenses are going up, and that's a deep concern. But they also know that the water department's expenses go up for the same reason at the same time. So if you just let the increases occur without a counterbalancing increase in the rate, then you are, then things will drop off precipitously. You can't do that in your own home budget. That's why we talk about how you struggle to make ends meet. Well, so does the water department. And one of the things we have to do is find other sources of revenue. So your proposal to cut the transfer I was thinking of it as a compromise if we were going to go for an increase larger than the 15% that's in the budget. But if we keep what's in the budget on both sides, then I'm satisfied with that. So we don't decrease the transfer and we don't increase above what the budget has already increased the rate. And I can be absolutely satisfied with that. So anyway, in short, too late. I'm not in favor of that, of the motion.
So, we have Councilmember Litzel.
Could I just add
Sure.
something? So it's always been my understanding that the transfers from our enterprise funds, our city businesses are justifiable if the health of the fund can sustain it without adversely impacting the fund itself. I would argue that we have been flexible in what the transfers have been. It is just this year that we're proposing $200,000 from sanitation, where there's been almost nothing from sanitation for quite a while. So if the fund can sustain it or not, we've adjusted things. And I would argue with the water fund, because the cash reserves, unrestricted cash balance is down to barely $4 million. In FY15, it was at 7.4, 16, it was over $8 million. So it's almost half of what it was previously. And the money is not necessarily being spent on water projects. I do understand that, costs go up. We've had at least 3% annual increases that have been in place for a while. We added the infrastructure renewal charge to pay for mains, and we're not necessarily spending that money on mains. I mean, to say that to spend $1 million to save 250,000, that wasn't what I'm suggesting. I'm saying is get to that 1% target so that eventually we will get to all of those leaks. Some of those leaks actually are fixed and they're easily accessible and easily identified. Some of them, it's just like, who knows where it's going to, we can hear it, but getting to it, et cetera. I mean, so we have, at least unless the policy is changed over the years of doing the transfers, as long as it's not an adverse impact, okay, it makes sense. Of course it makes sense. Other, monopolistic utilities around the state of Missouri, they're stockholder companies, they're stockholders, they're shareholders, get dividends, et cetera. And our citizens here are our shareholders. So it makes sense to share this. It's just in this case, I don't feel like I feel like the water fund has been bearing a higher amount of the brunt of doing as far as the transfers. I mean, it's to raise the rate by double digit and then take some of the money away towards roads. I mean, everybody wants their roads done. I have no problem with that. We have a burner on the or plan on the back burner on how to actually directly fund roads. But I feel strongly that, water could keep the 500,000 and increase its cash balance, or it could be to fund whatever, projects Bill has teed up and ready to go that, he says he's got a queue of things. If it's designing Rayner Road, if it's upsizing the fire department's supply lines, whatever it is. I respect that you all don't agree with me. I've been talking about this for months, so it's not like I'm springing it on anybody. But this is, I think this is something that we really need to look at so that we can answer these questions, and water pays for water, and any, reasonable excess would go into the capital fund. So that's all.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to reduce the transfer from water from 710,000 to 210,000. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say no.
No.
No. So I count that as 2 in favor, 5 opposed, so the motion does not pass. You still have the floor. Were you finished or did you have more? Or is it just that?
My
it's just
main
that
thing
motion?
is just the water thing. I
Okay,
mean, I
all
could
right.
talk about other things, but
understood.
no, I'm
Yeah,
good. Thank
okay.
you.
All right, do we have any other questions or comments on, the budget under substitute bill 10967? Councilmember
I
Zimmer.
don't know if anybody else, if we've gone all the way around.
Well, I hadn't.
Oh, you had that, I'm sorry
think
about
we've
that.
gone
You
all
had just, that's kind of what I lost my train of thought. You kind of, if you wonder why.
Yeah, my
At a
concerns.
freight train or a
Oh.
passenger train?
Councilmember Sears.
Yeah,
your
my
turn,
concerns will come with planning for the next year and its budget were mainly with roads and the safety concerns and the water. Well, I've talked about the water too much. So so we'll just adopt those previous water comments into this about the general budget. So talking about roads and safety on the roads, I think that it will be good to see a line item on each project so that just so we can gauge and answer people's questions, since this is kind of new to the city and we're one of the few, if not, we're one of the very few smaller cities that have adopted all of these safety principles and committed to incorporate them. So it'd just be good to see for historical purposes how much it added to our costs. Then you can get also stats on how much accidents costs and things like that, and how much we saved if that worked. I'm glad to see that coming on. I don't know if it can be, and then it can be used as data for the next budget and the budget after that and everything, if we start establishing a baseline. So all good. And then other cities can share and maybe join in the happiness that it creates. I do think, this goes back to water. I remember when we were really pushing, when I started on the council at first, I've said this before, but when I first started on council, it was a 1% placement rate with the addition of, I think, Mayor McDonald, came to us one day and said, he proposed this transfer of dividends, a regular transfer of dividends to help out with roads. With that and some other things, we got to what could have been a 2%. It was doubled the amount of money that we were spending on roads. And that quickly, we drew back from that pretty quickly. So I think we do need to, with all of these things, this council needs to be leaders. We need the leadership to do what is needed as far as safety goes, as far as the rates we charge, as far as all those things, and just determine ourselves what it is. And then when it's something it's not a nice pill to swallow, we need to be able to explain that and why it's necessary. Because if we just start saying, well, it's not popular right now to charge a certain rate or to take on a certain project that we should be taking on for public safety, then things just start to slip and unravel. So I think I'm in favor of this budget. I think we do need to incorporate those safety items in all of our projects, and then also keep track of the funding. So I think I'm satisfied with the answers we got earlier.
Thank you. Before we vote, Mr. Hawes, as CA Chief Administrative Officer, do you have any comments or anything on the budget or you'd like to make?
Well, the only thing I would want to say is I appreciate council's diligence in looking into alternatives. And one of the things that was requested of me is to give an unvarnished look at what it takes. And from a business standpoint, the 30% was recommended in order to get it into the black in an immediate fashion. But I fully understand that the budget proposed a 15. I wanted to throw an alternative out there, not just throw an alternative, but I wanted to have you understand that it most likely will not be in the black after this year, and there will probably have to be another adjustment after this year. We talked 15 and so forth. I appreciate y'all digging in and choosing what you feel is best for the city.
Thank you. All right.
Hey, Mayor, if I could, every year at this time, I make an attempt to boost the number of greeting cards that I get from Sandy and Jen. And I once again want to raise the opportunity for us to realign our fiscal year with the state and federal government with July 1 instead of where we are now. Best I can tell, the only reason we have our budget, our fiscals aligned as it is, so that every once in a great while, nearly half of this council shows up for a budget that they don't have anything to do with for a year. So it's just aligned with our election date. It doesn't make any fiscal sense whatsoever. And we're transferring money back and forth all the time. I think we should really give consideration. I know it's going to be a cakewalk for the folks in the finance department, but it's been done by a lot of municipalities and school districts, and even states have moved their fiscal. So we should really take a hard look at that.
All right. With that, let's have roll call on substitute bill 10967.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears.
Yes.
Bill passes. Thank you all for all you've done to get this together. Bill, Sandy, Jen, and everybody else. Thank you. Let's see with that. Do we have any city council reports?
I'll just apologize to everybody for being late to the party tonight. And I tried to do my research about how long these games are supposed to be much shorter.
Right.
So they're supposed to last 2.5 hours. They were in spring training.
Yes.
And that would have been plenty of time. I left at the 7th inning stretch because I knew it was going to be too bad. And then traffic was horrible because it matched up with city traffic coming back.
Let's get off this.
I apologize.
Somehow I made it back.
Yeah,
Have you-
Liz has been here
You
since
must
quarter
have
to
left-
seven.
you must have left earlier.
Bob, I
After the
appreciate
6th inning stretch.
the apology. Had the mayor not said anything, I wouldn't have noticed you weren't here.
You didn't miss much. So we
I know I
didn't.
missed his question.
All right. Let's see, anything from Chief Administrative Officer?
No report at this time, Mayor.
I forgot, Sarah, to acknowledge you, Sarah White, here
Yes.
tonight. Thank you for being here. Do you have anything to report?
I have nothing to report.
All
I
right.
just hope Mr. Hessel had a good time at the game.
I thought you could report that Highway 55 was clear from here to Cape Girardeau.
It was very clear. Yeah, I was in Cape Girardeau for hearing today.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
What would you know about Cape Girardeau?
Not much.
Yeah, really. All right, city clerk report.
Nothing to report.
All right. Well, with this being a special meeting, we only have 1 week until our next one. Next meeting of the city council is next Thursday, April 6th at 7 PM. This meeting is adjourned.